Welcome back. We've got Naveen Munjal joining us, the MD at Hero Electric Vehicles, to talk about the kind of momentum that we're currently seeing and what the outlook is looking like currently. Naveen, good to have you with us. Now we're continuing to see those fuel prices spiral higher. Are you seeing a shift in consumer preferences towards EVs? What's the demand trend looking like right now?
Good morning. It's an absolute pleasure being here today. So yes, we are seeing a shift which is happening. So the footfalls that we've seen in the dealerships have increased substantially. Fuel price is one big trigger that has happened, but this is something which we've been seeing over the past year, where consumers have started looking at EVs as a very serious means of transport, especially for the commuter segment, especially people who are traveling to work, etc. So there are numerous benefits that EVs offer them, and they have been already looking at it earlier. Now that this fuel price is going up to the level which they are, which is at the highest we've ever had, there is a huge shift, or there is at least a huge amount of interest which is happening, coming up in consumers. So they are looking at it, they are researching it far more. And what they're finding is that the quality of EVs that we offer now are far superior, are almost at par. I mean, they are at par with IC engine vehicles. The life of the vehicle is a lot better than what it was earlier. The batteries are very, very good and they're advanced. The warranties on the vehicles are very good. And the cost of running, the initial purchase price is lower and the cost of running is much, much lower than the ICs. So what we find is the gap, the TCO, what we call it, the total cost of ownership between a combustion engine vehicle and an electric vehicle is rapidly increasing. It was already very, very large earlier. Now that gap is increasing exponentially, and that is driving people to start looking at EVs in a far more serious manner than what they ever have earlier.
Okay, fair enough. In terms of the kind of outlook on growth, and given what you've described on the EV side, are there any numbers we can put to it, especially given that we're coming out of this difficult year and demand actually seems to be very much intact, and as the EV segment continues to grow, would there be a way to quantify it?
See, it's difficult to say what the number for this year is going to be coming forward. But what we've seen, at least in our case, in our company, we've seen a growth over the previous year. So we have seen a substantial growth. And that growth is going to add on. And that growth is in spite of the first quarter getting lost because of COVID and the lockdowns and all the supply chains hit, etc. What we're anticipating is now we are seeing a hockey stick growth happening already now. So whether we look at it from a consumer standpoint or we look at it from a B2B standpoint. So the numbers have started to show an inclination towards upwards. And the price of oil certainly helps us in that direction. Now, what we are also finding is that we had estimates which we had done earlier. So we were looking at from 2025, anything about 1 million vehicles on the road EV. Now, that number can go up depending on how the government pushes it, both the center and the state. There is intent at both the center and different states in order to push this category through for various reasons, whether it is oil dependency or it's convenience, ease of use, or it's the pollution levels that we're talking about. So when we look at it from various angles, and urban pollution I'm talking about. So when you look at it from various angles, various scenarios, this number actually could be a very, very significant number in the next 3 to 4 years. And I have no doubts about it that it would be.
Sure. Mr. Munjal, also wanted to understand what is the total R&D spend and what is it that you're doing to enhance customer offerings?
So what we've done, we've been in this market for long enough. So we've actually been in this market now for 13, 14 years. And over this period of time, we've understood the customer preferences extremely well. Our team is very, very well experienced in this whole category. In fact, we've probably got one of the best teams in the country in this category. Now, what we've understood is one of the fear that customers used to have is charging. So where do I charge my vehicle? And when you look at various vehicles, when you look at e-mobility, you've got to actually divide it up into different baskets, 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, cars, commercial vehicles, etc. All have different needs, all have different requirements. When you look at it from a 2-wheeler perspective, so a lot of people who are living in flats, etc., for example, Gurgaon or Mumbai or any of these other cities or places, if they're living in flats and you don't necessarily have a charging infrastructure on the ground floor, so how do you charge your vehicles? So what we've done over the last number of years is switched our range to portable batteries. So all of our vehicles, we've got 5 platforms, 12 vehicles on top of that. So 12, that's a very wide range catering to early adopter of electric mobility, to a person who's going to be buying it at a premium end, or for a B2B category or a family vehicle. So whichever way you cut it, we've got a vehicle offering for you. Now, what we've done is we've got portable batteries across our entire product range. So which means you can take it up to your apartment or your office or workplace or wherever be the case, charge it, plug it back into the vehicle, and there you go. And we are offering customer various options in terms of the ranges as well. So if you're a light user, you could do with a 60, 70 kilometer range. Whereas if you're a heavy user, we would give you a vehicle which goes up to 210 kilometers. And besides the range, there are different vehicles catering to different segments and different speeds. Now, we've got the low-speed vehicles, which cater to a segment which doesn't have a license or doesn't require a license. So that could be for deliveries. It could be older people who don't want to get a license, but yet want mobility. So there's no licensing requirements there. Then what we are focusing on a lot is actually the city speed vehicles. Now, these are vehicles which will go about 45 kilometers an hour or so. Will give you a range of anything from 80 to 200 kilometers, depending on what battery you choose with that and how many modules of battery you choose with that. It's got enough torque to take you off from a traffic signal very quickly or climb up flyovers, etc. And this is a category where we find that the blend of the economics, the initial purchase price, the running cost, the battery efficiency, we are able to derive the best value out of this category, which is the city speed category. And that is something that we are focusing on. So that's what our R&D has been working on for the past many years, on how do we develop these vehicles and how do we extract the maximum energy out of the batteries and the motors and the technology that we've got inside these vehicles. Also, we want to make it as cost effective as possible. And so drive the price down, but drive the quality up. So we've got these city speed vehicles, and one of our models, Optima, we've been able to get the price down to about 57,500 rupees, which is cheaper than an IC engine vehicle to purchase. The initial purchase price is much cheaper. And the running cost is many, many times lower than that of any other combustion vehicle. So your initial purchase price is lower, your running cost is lower, and your service cost is extremely low. And this is something that's what I said, the gap is going to continue improving. And that is what our R&D is focusing on. How do we get vehicles to people in a cost effective and in a value efficient manner?
Okay. Also wanted to understand what your total order book is currently at. What is it looking like? And what is the visibility that you have from e-commerce as a channel?
So e-commerce is a very, very interesting channel for us. It's a very important channel for us. In fact, we've had a separate team which has been working on the e-commerce and B2B. Let me put the e-commerce in the B2B basket. Has been working on B2B. Now, within B2B, there are different categories. You've got the e-commerce, you've got the food deliveries, you've got owner-driven vehicles, and you've got campuses and shared mobility, etc. So there are different baskets. Now, we have been working with various e-commerce partners over the last number of years. We've got various vehicles under test. And like I said, we've got one vehicle and three variants of that vehicle, which is dedicated or which is targeted at the e-commerce category. So you've got a seat which folds up, a box can be fitted at the back, or a bag, whatever the person is carrying is fitted at the back. Again, has swappable batteries, so we understand that it's a commercial vehicle and you cannot stop the vehicle anywhere to use it, to charge it. So you take out the battery, you plug in a new one, then there you go. It's faster than actually filling up a tank of fuel. So e-commerce is a very important sector for us. What we are anticipating is at this point, e-commerce is about 9% of our total volume. What we are anticipating is going forward in the next 4 to 5 years, this would be about 30 to 35% of the total volume. And e-commerce is a segment which is slightly tougher to track because of the requirements and because it's not necessarily, the vehicles are not necessarily owned by the company. They are owned by the aggregators or by the person who's actually delivering the goods to you. But that itself is changing. So we are getting more and more companies who are willing to lease and finance these vehicles to those users. It's not a very large number right now from a finance or a lease standpoint, but that I anticipate is going to change. So from our standpoint, we are looking at targeting 1 billion vehicles in the next number of years. So that's the target that we are working towards. And that's exactly what we are gearing up for in terms of our teams, in terms of our plant and manufacturing, R&D, the vehicle lineup. what we anticipate is there is going to be a shift that's going to be happening from right now, 70% of the market is actually a low-speed market. What we anticipate is that market is going to shift towards the city-speed vehicles, and that is the segment, and then it's going to go towards higher-speed vehicles. As the technology improves, the battery prices come down, and as the gap widens with the IC engine vehicles, people are going to find that this is the vehicle which is far more efficient and economical vehicle for them to run and easier to maintain.
Thanks very much for giving us that clarity. Good to have you on board. That's the word coming in from Hero Electric Vehicles. On that note then, completely out of time right here on this edition of First Trades as well as the market. From everyone that put the show together, thanks for tuning in.